We are live. Welcome to Spill the Tea with Mikael Eliasen. We did it. We did it.
We did it.
You're here. Thank you so much for being here, Mikael. A second time. I totally appreciate it so much. Thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate it also. Is that tea you're drinking?
Oh, no, it's not. I mean, the cat's out of the bag. It's coffee. I prefer coffee.
Well, we can we're going to spill the coffee then.
Yeah, we'll spill the coffee beans. That sounds good.
Okay.
Ooh, look, good thing I don't have to sing today. I have a little plan.
Yeah. So
are you saying bye to our elf that helped us so much? She was so amazing.
Yeah. So, but my friend Sophia Hunt is telling me that it's not live.
It still says waiting.
It still says waiting.
It still says waiting. Okay, let's see. Because it is live on here. Let's make sure that we have it.
It's a good thing you're here.
Oh, here we are. We are waiting.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So you're there. It's okay. Thank you so much for checking that. So it is working.
It is
just
working.
A little delayed me.
I'll speak with you later. And Sophia's leaving. And if it stops working, just give a buzz, text or something. Bye.
Thank you, Sophia. Gosh. Thank you so much. She was your student, right?
Sophia Hunt was my student, Curtis, and she lives in my building here in Philadelphia. And because I'm just hopeless with technology and all that shit.
I'm hopeless. Look, we got it.
We got
it.
To help me, and she came up and was very helpful. There we go. That's Sophia Hunt. Wonderful, wonderful soprano.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you again for being here. The impetus for having you back was because we were having some really great conversations, you and I. And one of them was talking about Chautauqua this summer. And it, like so many institutions, has had to completely reframe how they are, structuring their entire summer. And they have decided to go online. And so I know that after 30 plus years of being there every single summer at the Chautauqua Institution, you have opted not to take part in the online teaching. And that's huge. I mean, that's a huge, huge thing for you and for, I think a lot of people are struggling with this decision. And I wanted to ask you about that and pick your brain and say, how was that decision for you? Was that hard to make? Did that take a lot of time? I assume it did because you've been there so long, you know?
It was pretty agonizing. I spent a weekend sort of agonizing over this decision. It came out of a lot of things. When this whole lockdown started, what is it, 5 months now? 5 months, March the 12th, whatever date it was. You start thinking about what is it that one is doing? What is it that I've done for, all these years, for 40 years of my life? What is it that makes me different and maybe more unique, or what has been my success?
Yeah.
And also at Curtis, running the Curtis Opera and Voice Department. So in the lockdown, of course, one has lots of time to ponder, and I pondered a lot. Because of course, a lot of things were now online, including also Summerfest at Curtis, which I have been doing for the last bunch of years, and decided also not to do that.
I did not realize that was continuing online. Okay, thank you for bringing that to my attention.
It didn't continue online because I was not doing it. It was just canceled. but it sort of started a whole process of like, what is it that I do? And because I'm so old, I'm 75 now. Um, you sort of, and I retired from Curtis this past year. Like, what do I want to? What am I doing with my time? Actually,
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really think that I have been able to do, which is, this contact, making contact with a singer. They walk into a room and you make some kind of contact, and through that contact, you make music.
Yeah.
So, wherever, not only at Curtis, but wherever I've gone all over the world to do master classes,
Mhm.
this, this ability to um, meet somebody and immediately find the way to together to find a way where maybe it can be more beautiful or more interesting, more deep, or whatever you want to call it. So,
Yeah, it's sort of, um if I may, what you're describing to me sounds like a palpable connection that you're talking about that happens live, right?
yes.
That palpable, sort of
And what I,
seeing one
what
another, and I love that so much.
excuse me. And what I realized was that, excuse me again. Must
Bless
be
you.
must be some kind of thing because it's the weather.
Dust.
Yeah, dust. Because
Dust.
one hasn't cleaned in 5 months. Whatever. I'm kidding. Um,
I know.
but
We talked about it too.
what I realized is that what I was doing up in Chautauqua when I was up there, I've been there for 34, 35 years.
Yeah.
Was most of the singers I didn't know, and I would meet them for the first time, and that is what I found interesting in my life, was to make that connection. And then I was never that interested in, that's a double T, make it more legato, the sort of the toolbox of coaching, maybe you could sort of put it that way. And using those tools, yes, of course they're there. What I was interested in sort of was to make a connection to somebody else's heart and soul,
Yes.
and find out how we can put that into the music. That's maybe the best way of saying it. And because I do believe very much, especially in recent years and definitely now, we're afraid really to go and do something different. You go to an audition, there are 100 sopranos, they're all vying for the same job. And what you're being taught in schools across the country, very early on also, is not to disturb, not to make something that might not please the other person who's going to give you a job. So this pleasing element is something that I have never been interested in.
No, you haven't.
Yeah.
No, you have not.
And even when I was a little kid, it was not about pleasing. It was about finding ways to be interesting, to find the ways to make music in a special way. All of the people that I'm going to talk about singers now, but I can also throw in some pianists. All of the people that we talk about now that have been dead for years and years and years. Let's take Maria Callas.
Mm-hmm.
She's the main, a big person. She didn't do it the way that other singers did. She
No.
made music coming from her soul. Vladimir Horowitz, for example, also played the piano in the, and these are the ones that we talk about. It's very interesting. I never heard Callas sing live, but I did hear Sutherland sing live several times. Lucia in Vienna, and also here up in New York. But we have much less discussion about Sutherland or today, whereas Callas can still provoke something in people. I've heard people even now say, I just hate her. I just don't. I just hate Cal. You know. So of course
Yeah.
that's the part that interests me is the interesting part of somebody's heart and soul. So when
Well,
of
and you know,
course Chautauqua.
I was gonna say, don't you think
Yeah,
that's where
something happened.
music? I was gonna say, sorry, that don't you think that's also where music lies? So it's not only bringing what is in your soul to the music in a live coaching and performance, but it's also accessing your truest music. You as an artist accessing your truest ability to create and connect. Because I feel like that same place that you're talking about, your heart and your soul, is where your music lives and where it comes from. So it really makes sense that you go about your coaching and everything trying to connect that way. But so you really felt like you couldn't get that same connection via the web,
No.
via Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it couldn't happen. And then also
Yeah.
because I've done in all the years that I've been going to Chautauqua, I've done a big concert that every summer, and then they wanted me to do another concert this year also. And then I realized that I would be rehearsing with the singers. Usually there were 10, 12 singers in the concert.
Mm.
I would be rehearsing with the singers sitting in Oklahoma or in California and so on. And I decided at this point in my life, that's not actually how I want to do things in my
Right.
quote unquote remaining years of like, oh, we're going to do this. Also, another big influence uh, on me was I've been very fortunate in the last few months to work with one of my former students, and by some miracle of a chance, we have been given a space in a church here
Wow.
Old Pine Street Church. Actually, it's where
Yes.
Washington and John Adams and these people went to worship. And he is soloist in that church, and he has gotten the permission for us to go once a week there for a few hours to go and work on a project that we had sort of started to do, which was Winterreise or Schubert. And now we have been actually going there and rehearsing once a week and doing this live, in the same space where we're together in this space is, I hate to use the word a great blessing, but maybe it's appropriate because it's in a church.
Yeah.
And being an atheist, it's really very interesting that I use that word, but I actually do see it that way because it reminds you about what it actually is all about and that kind of relationship that one has with the singer, or that I believe that one should be having. So making this
That
decision,
connectedness.
yeah,
And I think also what you're saying by having it be a blessing is that you're realizing sort of like a larger connectedness. That is so great. I'm so glad you are getting to work with him each week. So did you finish Winterreise? How far are you?
we're halfway through.
You're halfway through. Yes, I love that. That's such a
So,
good like long work. That's great.
so then I spoke with the person who runs the program, Marlena Mallas, whom I've known for 35 years.
Now, Marlena, am I saying it right? Is that right? Marlena? I know who she is. Yes. I'm kidding. I know
Marlena.
who she is. She was my
So
teacher.
I will
Yes,
say
she was.
this is where friendship plays a big role because she was very
Mm.
understanding and wrote me a very beautiful email about that she understood perfectly. And then I also told it to Chautauqua itself, the administration, also very gracious. Look, I think if I were 28 years old or 31, whatever, it's a different story. It's a very different story. But I'm now at this point in my life where do I want to pretend that we're making music? I don't want. That's not what made me different.
Mhm.
You understand?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah. So anyway,
Authenticity.
it was
Yes.
a
And that.
very, yeah, it was a very agonizing. I had a horrible weekend, about it, and then I realized that. And I must say, I am very thankful that I made that decision. I have to
Oh,
say.
and I was going to say, so since then, have you missed some things as well? What are some things that you've missed from being there? Like, did you have a moment where you thought, oh, like 4th of July? I always think of Chautauqua and the Fisher, the wharf and things.
No.
Missed anything?
No. I mean, I miss being there because I've been going there for so long, and it's very beautiful. But I made, for me personally, for me at this point in my life, I made the right decision for me.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Difficult.
And I think, Michael, one of the things too that you give by living this way and by creating music this way and by supporting singers and musicians this way is you impart the importance of artists being authentic themselves. And I would say that's something else that's really different about you as an educator and as a performer too. And I wanted to ask you just a little more on that topic. What's some advice that you would give to young singers that are sort of in this new world and this new reality, and they're going into conservatory and they're in their practice rooms and they're kind of, I'm sure, feeling, I would imagine, a little bit lacking in the hope department, kind of wondering what's going to go on. And so I don't know. We're curious to hear what advice you might give to a young performer today.
Gee, that's such an excellent question. And it's a question, of course, that all of us are going around asking ourselves, whether we're young, whether we're old, whether we're medium, whether we're over the hill, whatever,
Yeah.
But what I would say is, and that's been one thing that I have found for myself, that it's very important to have a structure. So I try to play the piano every day. In other words, I would say try to.
I'm going to type these in.
I try to practice every day. I've known lots and lots of people, also professional musicians, violinists and pianists and so on, who don't practice, sort of feel not the urge, I would say. So I would say try to, even if it's just half an hour, 40 minutes, I try to do an hour of just sitting at the piano, The other thing is a lot of this is tied in with the hope, what we believe in. And since when we look at Europe and how Rome and La Scala and so on, all of these houses, they're slowly beginning to open up. So the orchestras, they're beginning to play again. And you realize that this country has been absolutely hopelessly led by an absolutely deranged piece of shit. So when I say hope is, I hope that all of you will get your asses out and vote. Because if you don't, there will be no hope in the future. And this fucking goddamn disease and virus will just keep at it and keep on coming back. We will not get rid of it until we get rid of that man and there's a real leader who can guide us. Just like they've had in Germany, Italy, Spain, England, they have people who at least have believed science. This is the most extraordinary thing that we have in this country right now, is that there's somebody running this country who has no belief in science, has belief in. I can go on about this. So I'm urging you, after you finish practicing for the time that you do every day, vote.
Yeah.
Because
vote.
I do think that this future, yes, I think Operaland is going to change. I think companies are changing. I'm very involved with the Opera Philadelphia. I see how these changes are going to manifest themselves in the future and so on. But the future will not actually change to a good thing until that man that is occupying the White House is gone. If he is not gone, we are in an autocracy. We're living in a dictatorship in this country here. We're living with an unhinged man running us, our lives. And that has actually influenced why that disease is still surging and surging in this country, In which case,
And
why we can get out and do concerts and do opera and do theater and do ballet and all of these things. So
yes,
that's
100%.
that is the biggest thing that I can say is that if the hope is to return, then we need to change the kind of government that we have right now. That's what I.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the other thing I would suggest for young singers, besides the practicing, making sure that you feel the sensation of singing in your body, and then I would listen to a lot of non-vocal music.
Oh,
So,
okay. Okay.
if you're singing a Mozart aria, for example, or why don't you listen to some of Mozart's symphonies? Or he wrote tons of stuff. I would also go and explore some of these great people that are writing operas nowadays. Thomas Adès, Brett Dean, Hamlet. That there's a fantastic production of it from Kleinborn. Explore that. You have the time to explore it, and then maybe instead of sort of thinking, "Oh, I don't like that kind of music," isn't really. Maybe listen to it. Give it an openness to it. I believe that the future of where opera is going to go is not with the Aidas and the Traviadas and the Trovatores and the Macbeths. I think the future of where opera is eventually going to land and bring in young people is in what is being written now by young, gifted composers. Breaking the Waves of Missy Mazzoli, for example, I think is an amazing piece. Renee Orth, who went to the school where I was teaching at Curtis, they write extraordinary music. And I think it's the kind of music that maybe younger people would be interested in. If I may be and say a very sarcastic kind of thing, if young singers are not that interested in going to see Aida, who the fuck is going to go and see opera? Right?
Yes, yes. Who the fuck is gonna go see it? Not me.
So
Yeah.
I'm just saying, now when
Yeah.
we have an enforced time, I remember for years, I would say, God, I just don't have time to do that. I don't have time to listen to that. I don't have time to read that book. I don't have to. Now, of course, I've got 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
I mean, I do little Zoom meetings here and there and fill some time with that. But there's a lot of time left over. And in fact, that could be a very positive time to fill with the things that we've been saying. Oh, I don't have time to do that. But now, actually, you do. And one of the things that I highly would recommend for singers who, besides that they like to sing, maybe also would like to listen to some of the music that's being written by their contemporaries. I think is probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give, because I believe that the future in the next 10, 15, 20 years, that's what we're going to be hearing. That's what
That's
companies.
awesome. And so do you feel, are you working toward that sort of new music with Opera Philadelphia right now, or is that not even something you can kind of think about?
Well, Opera Philadelphia is one of the few opera companies in the country that actually has a composer in residence program.
Yes, they do, and have produced many of the new operas that are incredible and sweeping.
Has been very forward-thinking about, we need to support these young composers. And
yes,
so
amen.
I've been very active in that, and I'm a great believer in that. That's where the future is going to
headed.
So,
and I know
all of the young singers who are, maybe watching or listening, this is the time maybe to explore these pieces, explore the Thomas Adès, explore the the Exterminating Angel, all of these pieces that one reads about and they're being done. There's terrific productions of them on that you can find.
Missy Mazzoli,
So I'm just
David Little,
suggesting that I think they can be very inspiring, and
so many. Stefan Weissman is a great one. So many young composers. Matt O'Coin, Lembit Beecher. Oh my gosh, his work.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, I'm just saying, now is the time maybe when we can find the time to do these things.
Yes, and and going back to what you were saying earlier about connection, about that part of that you connect with live, and about what is inside of us. That's how also to keep the hope going, right? And to keep the arts going in our own ways each day, right? If I may kind of put that into your mouth also.
Well,
would you agree?
Now you did it. You put it in my mouth.
And then and it's not the first time. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. It's live and you start saying weird stuff. It's me. Oh yes. Okay. I also, it's funny or interesting, I should say, that you mentioned Europe in the facts of how much they're doing right in terms of this virus. So taking that into consideration, how are you feeling about gigs and residencies and master classes that are taking place in Europe? Do you feel comfortable going to Europe right now? Is that something that you're doing, or what's your feeling on travel, specifically to Europe?
I was supposed to go to Europe now in August to teach. However, the Europeans don't feel so comfortable with Americans coming to do anything in Europe, as you might know. The EU
probably also because of the things that you were raging about earlier. I mean, would you trust us? Look who our president is.
The other thing is getting there. I'm in the category of old, underlying diseases, that I have heart shit,
I'm sorry.
And as my doctors, when we were talking about traveling, which I would have been doing in the next few days, he said, "Are you out of your fucking mind to sit on a plane for 9 hours with 300 people stuffed around you?" Like, so there are several issues, which is the travel issue. First of all, I think if one could get there in a safe way, maybe. Probably it's maybe okay to go and work there. But getting there, I decided then last week, not to take that risk for myself.
And to stay home.
And to stay home,
Yeah, and I think everybody has to do with what they think is the best thing, obviously, too. Wow. Okay. Well, I said wow because I just looked down at my notes, and the two things that I have to write are like sort of the two things that I wrote down next are controversial, and that makes me feel a little bit wow. But first, I'm going to say Dominic Armstrong joined us, and he says hi, and Basso Lirico is here as well, and they're saying hi to you. Hi, guys.
Hi, Dominic. How are you? Is he good?
Yeah. And so I just wanted to say hi. And then because we're right at 30 minutes, so I wanted to ask you a couple more questions that might be a little bit harder, but for you, I know it's not a problem. But they're just hard questions during this climate. Firstly, there's been a lot of talk right now in opera. I've seen a lot of podcasts and things about body image, and there's been a lot of shows about this. Now, I know this isn't new, but especially now with everything being online and everything being this way, there's a lot of people that are up in arms and coming out and saying how much they have been sort of cast or not cast due to their size, and how it has been very damaging to them as to their spirit or to, having their own experiences with it. I shouldn't paraphrase at all. But I just wanted to kind of open that up. What do you think? Do you think that one's physical size has a place in in a casting director's mind or in a director's mind? Do you think that that's kind of gone out of whack? What are your thoughts on body image and casting?
This is where
I don't know if I asked that very well.
This is where zooming is sort of kind of like weird, because you sort of like where I'm just staring into myself, into you, kind of thing. I think
and then I sort of start going.
Yeah, but these are complicated questions because, for example, right now there are two singers who are having massive careers. Angela Mead and Jamie Barton, who I would venture to say are, larger people. I think that there is we're in a sort of a transitional period, maybe, where if we are looking to start having much more cinematic ideas about how opera should be presented, then of course probably young people don't really want to look at because it's fearful to look at somebody who's different than ourselves. I mean, it becomes
part of the equation. It becomes part of the equation, right?
Yeah. So
right. And so
if the more we become less voice oriented, the more the image becomes much stronger. Do you understand? When it's at the point where that the voices may be so spectacular, where we don't care what the rest of from the throat on down looks like, because the voice is so spectacular. I mean, when I think back from when I was growing up, like Caballé, for example, who was a large person, but she also happened to, if I were to list the, let's say, top 5 sopranos who had the most beautiful, just as beauty, she probably had one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
And you didn't really care when she sang Salome or whatever, that she was a large lady. But
and so, do you think that is happening though? Do you think that it's becoming too image focused? I guess that is what I mean. I did not ask you that question very well. I'm sorry. What I wanted to say is, do you think that is happening? Do you think that it's becoming out of balance? And especially now when things are online and things like that, do you think that it will become out of balance? I've seen just an uproar sort of on this topic. And so I kind of just wanted to check your temperature on it.
Yeah, but like in all, there are always these phases, whether it's when we look at films from the, let's say, 20s, and through the 40s, and then through the 60s, and through the 80s, and then to today, and we look at the people who were the famous people back in the 20s and 30s and the ones in the 50s. I'm talking now about in movies, and the style of acting. You can historically sort of see how it has changed to. We were actually watching something the other night, Guys and Dolls, Marlon Brando and Frank Sinatra.
Yeah,
completely miscast. It's beyond belief, and yet somehow, that's what people wanted. I'm just saying that maybe the way we think of how something should be done on a stage. The same thing with singing. When you listen to singers from the 20s and 30s and 40s, You listen to orchestras. You listen to the Vienna Philharmonic from the 30s playing a Mahler symphony, and you listen to Simon Rattle doing Mahler Ninth with Berlin Philharmonic. It's like two different pieces because the performance practice is so different, just in the use of glissando, for example. I'm just saying that. So also, I think the idea of what we think is beautiful, what we think is sexy, what we think is, something that we want to put our eyes on, is it changes constantly.
Totally. Michael, you are so right. You are such a genius. Oh my gosh. Yes. You totally just like blew that open. You blew that question open. Wow. Yes. Awesome. Oh man, that's so true. That is so true.
And now we have to get into the phase of that, in fact, we can have an African American conductor, an African American stage director, an African American production manager, an African American set designer, an African American singer singing Dada, besides Aida, with Anna Netrebko in blackface. That has to stop. Do you understand? But it's not just the singers themselves that where we say, oh yes, well we can have an African American Susanna, for example, or whatever. And so we have that, but it's the whole business, the whole apparatus of the stage. Then going even more into the administration, into the administration, into the board. I look at the board of many places, also of educational institutions. Who are they? Rich white men, mostly. That are sitting there. So I mean, just like with the image of, it's about imagery, isn't it? Now that I'm thinking about it. It's about the image of what we think it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be thin and white. Oh, but why can't it be maybe a little bit larger? Why can't it be African American? Why can't it be Chinese? And it's interesting because we have accepted much more Asian singers onto the stage than we have African American.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, and that, I would say, my next question here, which you're segueing perfectly, is my next question is about racism in opera. And I think that's really cool what you just did, which was to link it all together and to link it to the aesthetic, which is probably one of the reasons why there's been this uproar at this time, because it is about what's beautiful. And what you're saying is by accepting something much more Asian, which we have done, I would say the reason that that's more acceptable in our country is because of, race, the history of racism in the United States, and what we've done. So on that, from there, what do you think about the statements that have been made saying that opera is racist? Do you think that that's true in America and abroad? Do you think that it's been run, kind of like a racist white boys club?
Well, I don't know about, all the European countries have a different background and a different history than America does. I don't think, I come from a small country, Denmark, that they don't have a constitution that says, we're all equal and we're all the same and all this kind of stuff there. So, but we do somehow have that here in the United States. But it turns out for all these hundreds of years that that's not really been true.
Right.
I probably as a non-American, it's maybe difficult for me to comment. What I can say is, what I would say is that when you talk about opera companies, theater companies, ballet companies, the performing arts as a Western form of entertainment, if you wish, we definitely, as it was pointed out by one of my ex-students, Janae Bridges, but also, when in the New York Times a couple of Sundays ago are saying, where are I have, I think it was maybe Janae Bridges who said, I've sung with all these major opera companies and I have yet to have an African-American stage director, for example. So, I mean,
Wow.
is there how come, or a conductor?
Yeah.
Why do we hire white people to put on Porgy and Bess, by the way, at the Met, for example, with an all-black cast? So, I mean, little questions that one can ask about these things. I don't have the answers on it. I think schools have to start looking at what is the audition process, where
And right.
what do the administrations look like? What do the boards look like? We have it's sad.
And integrating completely.
I think it's sad when it takes public lynchings to get us to think about these things. And the bottom line is that what happened in Minneapolis is a public lynching that took place there. And we all watched it and said, what the fuck? Maybe we need to do something about this. And that's exactly what is happening right now. And so
is
it in the opera world? Yes, of course it is. Of course it is. And I'm not talking necessarily only about the singers, but it's in the orchestra, in the administration, in actually all the people that make opera happen. It's not only the singers, of course.
No.
So it's it's a huge big thing that's happening here in this country, which I can only probably say, maybe this is the time where how do we change these things?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a wonderful question, and I'm glad that somebody like you and the awesome people that I know at Opera Villa are working to do that, and the awesome people that I know around the country in opera are working to do that, because I feel like the way that we can do that is what you talked about, is having that structure and connecting with that part of ourselves each day to the best that we can. Don't you? I mean, that's all we can do, right? And keep,
and maybe educating ourselves.
Amen.
Educating ourselves about how did it happen? How did we get to be like this in this country? I think all these, in Europe, Germany's had to educate themselves. How was it possible to have the 30s, the Holocaust, the Second World War? How did they how did that get to happen? And I was raised to believe in Copenhagen, where I'm from, was that you have to try to educate yourself as much as possible about
and look at that. It came from the top down.
Yeah,
that was a cultural thing.
Yeah.
That was cultural. Like what you were saying at the beginning, we have to vote. It has to be everywhere. It has to be total. It's exactly what you're saying. Everything you're saying is brilliant and is completely total and awesome, and yay. And I'm so glad you're alive and talking to us. Thank you so much. Because it's just so true. It has to come from the top, and educating yourself, that information can help us. I feel like in America, we're afraid of information a lot. When someone knows something, we get afraid. That's why we're afraid of science, like you were saying, right?
Well, we are not afraid of science, but we have people that are leading us that are afraid of science.
Right.
And start talking about, means and ways and methods that are not scientific to, So,
Yes. Well, and go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, one can go on about this forever. Like, how did we get there? How did we, how did we end up like where we are now? we're like a third world country as far as this coronavirus is concerned. We're worse than a third world country.
Yeah.
Worse.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how that we go around thinking that America is the greatest country, the most forward thinking, blah, all of these things, great science and has proven itself in that way there. And yet in some areas we are ignorant and stupid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that has to do
100%.
with the way we're being led right now by an unhinged, insane creature.
Mm-hmm. It's so true.
And
And
it affects everything. It affects also how we think about opera in the future. It affects the education about singers, of everybody. Like, and the fear that when this lockdown sort of started, you're sort of like, oh, I can't go out. I can't do all the things that I usually do now. What am I going to do in this time? Because I'm locked down by fear. That is the overriding thing that is sort of that's
feeling.
that's what some people are rebelling against and saying, I am First Amendment. I can do whatever they want. Blah blah blah. I'm not afraid of that. And then of course, look at Southern California. Look at Texas. Look at Florida.
Well, and it's interesting that you say fear too, because I think they're also heralding the Second Amendment right as well. Gun sales have been through the roof.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, it affects everything in how one is singing. I just did another panel this morning, where we're talking about like how this fear affects everything that we're, in a way, how we're living our lives right now. The fear of how the fear of will it ever get back to a sort of kind of normal way of living that we had 6 months ago. Now,
right.
I don't know. I'm not a prophet. I'm not a seer. I don't know about those things. But it's the fear that we won't be able to actually live without this virus, this fear. I think it affects every aspect. When I sit down and play the piano and winterize or whatever, and practice, it's in the back of my mind. And I must say, I think that is true also of a young singer. It affects everything.
Definitely.
And why I hear from so many people that they just don't feel like practicing. They don't have the energy, the mental energy to do that. One starts off saying, "Oh, you could learn all those things that you were thinking about learning," and so on. And how many people just don't have the energy for it, the mental energy, the emotional energy. It's astonishing. It's astonishing what this is doing. So it's, that when you ask me what is advice to, that's why I started off by saying with the advice to a young singer, practice. Make yourself, like you make yourself go to the gym, make yourself also practice. Set aside 45 minutes every day. It's like I would ever get onto a bike and do physical exercise. I've never been into that kind of stuff and so on. But my husband, by chance, had bought a bike thing, and we have it here. And I started when this lockdown, 50 minutes every single day. And I kind of did it like a test for myself. I got to do this. If I don't, I'm just fucking around doing it all.
Right.
Which is very, very easy, to do these days. Yeah.
Totally. And, I, as somebody that has been depressed in my life, it's funny because what we're talking about, what you're saying is, because of COVID, people are having this sort of depression and feeling that way. As somebody that was depressed anyway, the things that you're saying really do work. And I know that from myself because practicing every day is like what got me through so many times, going into my practice room and like having that connection with the piano and sitting there and my voice. And I remember feeling lonely and being like, oh, my friend, singing and hearing your voice is like your friend, So I just really want to echo that they do work. Those tips, not only are they great and they work too, from a depression standpoint alone. But we have a little question here from somebody, which is from Basso Lyrico. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for asking a question. Also, Thomas Chavone is here. I wanted to say hi, Thomas.
Hi, Thomas.
So his question is, in this time of emotional turmoil, a lot of singers are finding the thought of getting on stage and being inside a theater very anxiety inducing and causing them a lot of trepidation. Do you have any thoughts or advice on overcoming this anxiety about performing again?
Well, that's a big, huge question. I don't really have advice about how. I mean, I suffer from the same thing. I haven't performed in nearly 6 months now, and I'm used to getting in front of people. I'm used to practicing with the idea that I'm going to get in front of people and do what it is that I have been practicing. That's why I'm saying practice every day, because
and you're practicing. You're practicing getting up and doing it. Totally.
What I'm finding is that practicing without a goal is the most difficult thing that I'm experiencing, and that's maybe what the question is about. So the goal for me has now actually been sort of going to this church. I'm sure Thomas Chavone would be very happy to hear that I'm going to church, and doing the Schubert. That has been a goal that, and that it's real, that it's actually in the same space, and that there's a connection between me and the singer. I don't have advice. The biggest advice I can give is to try to keep going. And maybe when we start opening up and you have maybe the possibility for doing little concerts with just 10 people there, or whatever the maximum amount of people you can perform for 25 people, whether it's in a church or in somebody's home, to grab it as soon as you can. I believe that it's very nice doing all of these online concerts and so on, but it's a game. I think of it as a game. I think of it as like, we're treading water until we actually can start swimming again. We're treading water and hoping that we will be able to swim. Wow. But I would say one way to do it is, get a few people together and do something. If the anxiety is such that you can't practice, then I think one has to start rethinking about, like, why is one doing it? If the anxiety is such about worrying about getting in front of an audience, then I would probably, and that means that you become impotent in the practicing, that you actually can't do it. Then I would say, maybe you need to rethink about, like, is that really what I want to be doing? Then maybe with or without the virus, like, what would the situation be? I don't think that doing something online, like so many concerts online, and it's very sweet and all that kind of stuff, but it has nothing to do with performing, because performing is about being in front of an audience.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Now, maybe in 10 years, it won't be that anymore. I'll be dead, so I won't give a shit, but I'm just saying,
Never not be.
Right now, for me, and certainly how I have been raised, is that performing is about getting it out in front of people, just like in coaching, is that making the connection with the audience, and that it's a mutual vibe that is going between the audience to the performer, from the performer to the audience.
Yeah, and I just we're running out of time, and do you have any like on that, in thinking about live performance, and like I've really actually, talk about a blessing, like, been happy that I have had moments where I feel really grateful for all of the performance that I've done. I have had, because a lot of times I've looked back on the performance that I've done and missed it. and looked on it with this melancholy, right? Whereas I have recently been lucky enough to have appreciation too. And like this morning, I was like, oh my gosh, Lorca was like the best thing I ever got to do, with you singing that. And that was just incredible. And I just had such appreciation for it. Do you have any like story from your like live performance that like come to mind that you're like, that were funny, or something that comes to mind that was like only possible because you were performing live, or you were live watching a performance or performing?
I
I
don't.
mean, every single time, right? There's something.
I don't think very much about the past of my performance past. But that's one of the things about the silver lining, if you want to call it that, of this lockdown, and that you do start. Your brain goes into all of these most extraordinary places.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Because you sort of search, and then I suddenly realized, yes, there were, and also because I'm doing the Winterreise. And what is interesting about doing the Winterreise for me in this church that George Washington used to go and pray in, is it is the first time that I'm doing it with somebody so young. It's somebody, a wonderful baritone called Patrick Wilhelm, and he's 23, I think. And in my professional life, when I've done it maybe 100 times, it has been with older singers. So, in fact, and I was very excited about doing it with Patrick. We were supposed to have done it at Curtis before the lockdown, and then, of course, it was canceled. And then we started working on it on Zoom, just the text and so on. And then one day, when we finished the text, I said, "We need to sing. You need to find a place where we can sing." And he found this church where he's actually soloist. So we're there alone in the place,
Love it. I love it. I'm so jealous.
This experience of doing it with a 23-year-old talented kid made me think about former performances of where I've done it and who I did it with and so on. And what the difference is for me doing it with, I call him a kid. I mean, he's not a kid, but he's a kid. And with these professional singers that I was performing with all over, wherever it was, in Vienna, in Berlin, in Utah, Salt Lake, whatever, pick a place, in New York. And I have to say, maybe it's because of the circumstances, maybe it's because of where I'm at right now and where we all are at in the world right now. I am more excited about doing it with a 23-year-old than I was with doing it with anybody that had been doing it,
forever. Yeah.
Ever.
Cool.
And there's something that has made me think a lot about that. It's a gift, and made me think a lot about the live experience of it.
Yeah.
Just the only other thing that there's some recordings that I've been thinking about. There is a recording of Galina Vishnevskaya, the great Russian soprano, who I was fortunate and very fortunate to get to know quite well, and was also teaching in her school that she started in Moscow. She's dead now. But when she was banished from Russia, from the Soviet Union, and they were stripped of she and her husband, Rostropovich, the great cellist, they were stripped of their citizenship there. And they then moved to Paris. And she did a concert in Paris with Rostropovich at the piano, and they looked terrible. It was a huge thing to be stripped like that of their, and she's kind of, look, they don't look, but she sings songs. and go to them sometimes when I'm feeling a little sorry for myself and sort of no, actually it's okay. We will come through all of this just like they did. But in this song, she sings one of the Tchaikovsky songs is about longing for the country, for her country. And it is so extraordinary. It's a live performance, and but it's not online. They are together in the room, and there's an audience around them.
Wow.
But I think about that performance often. I often go and it takes maybe 10 minutes, the whole thing, to watch it. It's very inspiring to me. I was also part of the process. That is how we make music with people. It's very when you see it, the people are very close to it. It's clearly not a very large hall. It's not in a hall. It's in a sort of a room and the people, and you see them just raptured in her singing. They're rapt, And maybe just to finish off our time, but that is what this is about. And I mean, I encourage people to go and listen to Galina Vishnevskaya if they can find this thing, live concert. What?
Yeah. What was the title, or what could I don't know how to spell her last name. Yeah, Galina
Vishnevskaya. Okay. That even in the worst of times, that's what making music is about, that you can actually make it so that the audience is completely in your heart. You are completely in their heart, and they are completely in your heart. It's a very magnetic thing that this woman does, Vishnevskaya. And it's been, in my thinking, very inspiring to, yes, we are living terrible, terrible times. But there is hope. I do believe there's big hope. I believe there's hope. Because I believe that on November the 3rd, we will have it will be infused with hope. Because we're going to get rid of something. It's like getting rid of a cancer.
Yes.
It's going to be cut out. And then we were able to be, now we can make music. Now we can make opera. Now we can make theater. Now we can make dance. Now we can make wonderful.
Now we can breathe.
Now we can breathe, and we can make wonderful things.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to see what you make next. I really can't thank you enough for doing this, and for doing it a second time, and for everybody that joined us. Basso Lirico, by the way, was DeAndre Simmons. He says hi too. Oh, and Thomas says, how are the cats? How are your cats?
Thomas, they miss you.
Oh, okay. I didn't know Thomas.
He used to come and give medicine to one of the cats, and he was fantastic. He was fantastic in how he did it.
What a heart. And wait, okay. We have another friend joined us named Shrieking Violet, and she said that connecting with artists regularly is the only thing saving her right now. So that connectedness, I think, is really speaking to everybody. Thank you so much, Mikael. I can't thank you enough for your wisdom, your continued perspective and openness. And I'm really excited that you were here today. And I hope that you'll come back again. And I'm kind of staying home now, but I know also you're doing residencies, master classes coming up too. So we look forward to hearing. Yes. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? What is great about our combination is that we both love talking.
Oh, yes, exactly. Well, Oh, silver lining. Okay.
Bye, Tammy.
Thank you so much. Thanks for everybody that joined, and we love being updated. Thank you for sharing your heart with us. Let's make music and be well. Stay safe, everybody. Mwah! Bye. Thank you, Mikael. Bye. I love you.
Love you too. Bye.